Greg, I'm going to start this one off with a story this week. So we were on the cruise a couple of months ago, and I saw something. It was a little out of the ordinary. Not really. It wasn't out of the ordinary because we see it on a daily basis all the time. But this one kind of stood out, given the circumstances that was going on at the time. So um, while we're at a music trivia, and which we lost by two questions, right? It was a Jerry Lee Lewis song and another song I didn't recognize. But me and the young lady I was playing with, we lost by two questions. But that's a side story. Uh, but I look over, and while the Fun Squad person is playing the questions or playing the song, they play a little snippet of the song, and you guess what the song is. They'll play 10 songs, and you guess the song and the artist, and it gives you. So there's a lot going on, right? Tons of families playing. Uh, um, the room is packed. Every table is taken up, and I look over, and there was a family of about five, maybe six people. I just noticed a group, but out of that group, there was only one person playing the trivia. It was an older, I'm assuming the oldest daughter, right? She was looked like she was late teens, maybe early 20s or so. Maybe a high school, college age lady playing. But there were three kids sitting at the table, and I noticed them because, again, we always look around and we notice technology that we love. And all three kids had some very large iPads. So let's say the 13 or 12.9-inch iPad Pro. They were all sitting around the table. They all had their little stands up, and they were all just uh, lost in those iPads. They all three had the very expensive family package, the Wi-Fi package, and I know it's very expensive because you know how frugal I am. Very expensive Wi-Fi package because the only package that you can get to YouTube and video streaming like Netflix and stuff is that last tier, the most expensive tier that gives you the most bandwidth. All three had the Wi-Fi package. All three were watching some YouTube video. I couldn't see what the kid to the the back of his iPad was facing me, but I could see the other two brothers. Both they were all watching some YouTuber jumping around, yelling and screaming about something, as they do on YouTube. I'm not. This is not a knock on YouTube. We don't want any YouTube beef with another YouTube channel, but that's just some of the things that the kids watch. And here's the kicker: the mom was sitting at the table too, and I'm assuming the mom could because she was the oldest female there. Again, I don't really know the family dynamic, but let's just call her the mom. She was sitting there on her phone, just totally engrossed in whatever she had going on her phone. One minute I'm looking at her, she's scrolling through Facebook or Instagram or something. And the next minute she's playing Candy Crush, and they're all just oblivious to whatever was going on around them. So here we are sailing. We're sailing away from Cozumel, and this wasn't like so there's a thing with cruises too, Greg. When if I can ever get you to go on one, you'll notice that the last sea day of the cruise on the way back to Galveston, things kind of wind down, right? There's not a lot of events going on. There's actually people with their laptops out working their jobs. I can see people banging away on their keyboards and stuff, and people are with blankets all over and they're reading books and they're just everything is just kind of easy going because that's the last day. Everybody's prepared to go back to the real world. This wasn't that. This was mid cruise. We're leaving Cozumel. We're sailing around the Yucatan Peninsula. We're on this beautiful ship. There's tons of activities going on. There's a water park at the top, right? There's games, there's activities, there's trivias like I like to do. If you remember my cruise corner, all of the trophies we won from comic book trivia and music trivia and things like that. There's tons of things going on, and there's this family here basically on vacation, tuning out, blocking everything out. You know what I mean? And it just got me to thinking when I saw it, not only is this something like I saw it, I'm like, I got to tell Greg about this. This is crazy. But it was also something I thought would be a good idea to discuss on the show. So today we're going to talk about when tuning out goes wrong. You know what I mean, Greg?
Yep, I'm with you.
So this is going to be a little different, right? We're going to skip the news, we're going to skip the catch up and all of that, and we're going to just jump right into it because this we feel is a heavier topic. Uh, Not really. Of course, we're not going to change anyone's opinions or change the world in an hour show, but just want to give folks something to think about when they're in situations like this. We talked about having guests on the show before, and I think neither one of us are psychologists. We're just grandpas, so we're going to definitely share our opinions. But um, this would be the perfect episode. I wish we would have had someone professional lined up, someone that's done a study or done some kind of research heavier into this subject. But no, today you just get us. So, well, without further ado, let's jump into it. This is Guidance for Families, the show where you get two grandpas talking about tech, family, gaming, and just about life in general. And hopefully, we can give someone the tools that they can use in their own life. I'm your host, Jay Benjamin.
And I'm your host, Greg Cunningham. Thanks for tuning in, even though this is going to be a little bit heavier topic, but I think it's a great one for us to be talking about.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks for everyone that's joining us today. Hopefully, we don't scare off the younger audience. We don't scare off the younger audience today. Don't forget to hit that
Hey, but here,
subscribe.
hold on. Here's the
Uh-huh.
thing. I wish I had heard some of this when I was younger.
Yeah,
Something like
yeah,
this that would have helped me figure things out for myself and my kids. And now I'm working on my grandkids. So this is definitely something I'm focused on with the grandkids, and I'll explain why. But yeah, even
yeah.
let's not, if you're younger and you think, oh, this doesn't apply to me, whatever, it does.
It does. It definitely applies to you. So if you like what you hear, hit that subscribe, follow button, or not. Greg and I are always about letting people make their own choices. But like Greg said, this is definitely something that everyone needs to hear. Um, so stick around for that. Also, stick around for the post show. Greg and I will be heading to our extra innings, our overtime, our section of the show where we kind of dive deeper into whatever subject that we're talking about. And today we're going to talk about, are we wrong about the whole thing? Right? And we're going to try to make an argument for the other side of the issue and see if we can just try to see things from both sides of the aisle, so to speak. So yeah. So let's just jump right into the topic. Before we do, I do want to give a disclaimer. Um, we don't parent parents on this show, right? We've said that from the very beginning, even when we're talking about things as simple as which devices to buy. Ultimately, you have to do what's best for your family and your situation, right? But, we realize today we're going to sound like two grouchy old men talking about and complaining about technology and things like that. We're not. That can't be farther from the truth with us. We love our technology. Of course, we love our families, and we always try to find a balance between, you know, being able to live our lives with and using this technology as tools and toys and making sure everyone's happy, and then trying to find that balance between that and total anarchy, right? Because if we let our families run wild on these devices, if we let our children just do what they want, it'll be total anarchy. Nothing will get done. So, and I'm saying the children too. The same with adults too. I have to limit my time. I have to limit my usage of a lot of devices and things that I like to do. So, again, we're not making any judgments on anybody's parenting style. If you have to do these things, you have to do these things. But um, we just want to give you something else to think about. Greg, you want to add anything to our little disclaimer?
Nope, nope. Uh, we we have our opinions.
Yeah,
Yes, we're grumpy grandpas, but I think this is important. And no matter what, you can't get away from technology. So the question
yeah,
is, what are you going to do with it? Right? Are you going
yeah,
to let it control your life, or are you going to control it and allow it to enhance your life?
yeah. And I think that's what stage we're at now. We from the very beginning, right? We started off just loving these things, right? You and I carried multiple different types of phones and operating systems, and we loved to just play around with them. They were toys to us, but um, as app stores got more mature, and developers got more mature, and they got a lot better at their craft. They start offering better feature sets and all of that, and actually made these devices more useful. They kind of shifted to tools for us, right? They were tools to get things done in our regular
Right.
lives, and although we see them differently, I know we're still putting them in the hands of people where they're still recreation devices, right? Not everybody has to be productive on their
Right.
phone. Not everyone has to to diagnose different issues with their home or their rig or their, you know what I mean, or something like that. And so everyone uses their device differently. Again, we make no judgments about the way someone uses their devices. We just want to again just give someone a different angle to think about these things. So that's enough of that disclaimer. Again, we love everyone. We don't want to step on anyone's toes. So if we offend anyone, just let us know, and we'll try to explain things further and talk them through with you. But so let's jump into it. Uh, and I just put the title here. It's just tuning out while tuning out. That was something simple that something I thought, because it really seems like people, they use their devices to tune out, but you're already on vacation to tune out. So it just seems strange to me
Right.
that someone would do that. And again, that family, that was just the first example that I shared. There was tons of examples I saw around the ship, and while we're in port, off of the ship, and things like that. And actually, the family that we traveled with, they did a bit of it, and we were sitting down and they were asking like, "Hey, we can share the package with you if you got," and Wendy was like, "Oh no, he doesn't. We don't have the package, not because we can't afford it or we don't want it. Um, he doesn't want to be contacted. He doesn't want to see what's going on. He doesn't want to see. We got some really bad news several times on trips when we were out. So he doesn't want any of that. He wants to enjoy the day." And my wife was like, "I'll probably get it on my device, you know what I mean? But he doesn't want it." Um, so there was a lot of that. That was just one example, and I'll give another one in the post show later. But Greg, I shared the one story. Are there any experiences that you had that made you think like, "Hey, this is a little too much for me. Maybe I should say something, or maybe you shouldn't," or you know what I mean? Do you have any
Yeah.
examples of that?
Yeah. So I think this is interesting timing that we're doing this, because there's been a few podcasts and a couple of talks by church leaders recently that have kind of broached this subject, right? And
Hmm.
as we move into an AI driven virtual reality kind of world, the potential implications of that. But here's two quick examples. So one of them, on one of the podcasts a couple weeks ago, they talked about the old image of feeding an infant, right? No matter
Hmm.
how you're feeding that infant, it used to be that there was nothing to distract you. And it's 2 a.m. in the morning, and it's just you and the baby, and you're feeding them, and you're talking to them, or you're singing to them because you want them to go back to sleep, because you want to go
Yeah.
back to sleep, right? And there's this whole moment of bonding. And then they said, contrast that with the image that you would most likely see today is, yes, the feeding's going on, yes, you're holding the infant, but then you've got your smartphone in a hand,
Yeah.
right? And you're flipping through whatever it is that you're flipping through. So I think that's one example of this. And then I want to bring up, we recently went to Disney, and my wife and I are going again uh, in a few weeks. And so I had two thoughts while I was at Disney. One, I said, if we ever bring the grandkids or little kids here again, how are we going to help them when they're standing in these lines, right? Because the lines
Right.
can get pretty long, especially for those little kid rides. If you're on a day when there's 4 gazillion families there, which is most every day.
Right.
But and she says, well, I saw a lot of kids with phones and iPads and tablets and stuff like that, and it just
Hmm.
kind of hit me. Is that the experience that we want? Now, I don't have an answer for that yet.
Yeah.
If I think about some of the newer stuff in Disneyland, like I think about the Indiana Jones ride or Star Wars Rise of the Resistance, you're in these lines, but you're in the attraction, right? You're
Right.
in Indiana Jones, you can tell you're underground, and they've got all of the different things, and every once in a while there's a version of Indiana hanging from the ceiling, right? And trying to get out of the snake pit. And so you've got plenty to look at. But when I think about the area where the kids spend the most time, that's kind of the older part of the park, right? And that was
Yeah.
before they built in the fact that you would be waiting in line. So they didn't want you to feel like you were waiting in line. So I don't quite know what the answer to that is yet. Um,
Hmm.
I think there may still be some appropriate use of technology in those cases because you don't want the kids melting down, right, while you're waiting in line and you wait 45 minutes to get on Peter Pan, and then they have a meltdown right before you get on the ride and you have to step out of line and you miss that experience with them. So
Right.
that's one part of it. But the other thing that, the Disney app allows you to manage your whole trip there, right? I mean, you order food through the app and you pick it up at the counter. You
Hmm.
you can schedule time to go on rides if you have certain passes. You can see what the wait times are. You can see what show times are. I mean, all of this stuff is in the app. And at least the first day when we were there, I found myself getting lost way more often than not in
Hmm.
the app, not distracted for entertainment purposes, but trying to manage our trip. Right. And so what
Yeah.
we're doing with this next trip is we may still decide to buy some of those lightning passes and stuff. Haven't quite figured it out yet, but we actually booked a day and a half more than we had this last time. Um, so that one, we don't have to rope drop to midnight because frankly, I'm too old to go from 7 a.m. to midnight every single day.
Right.
But also so that we could just go and, like instead of we put on a lot of miles, we were bouncing back and forth because we'd schedule a ride on the other side of the park and we'd get off of one and immediately sprint over to the one clear across the park. And so we're not going to do that on this trip to try and get out of it. So I don't think it's just entertainment distraction, but I think it's even the tools that are built to help us have a better experience. We can
Hmm.
get lost in those. So anyway, those are the two
Yeah.
recent things that I can think of that kind of lean into our topic today.
Okay. Wow. So you almost have to train for Disney like a like a like a marathon or something, right? You have to start training a week before just to be able to get through the day, building up your
Yeah,
stamina, walking and going up and down the hill.
yeah, we've
Oh, that's
so
pretty good.
I mentioned that we had COVID here, and we've last week we started doing some walks, and yesterday I did my first bike ride in 3 weeks, and it was not anywhere near what I was where I was before COVID hit me. So yeah, I got to train for this
Yeah.
upcoming trip. So
Okay. All right. So there's a few things that I wanted to try to touch on today. And uh, first, what do we think the root cause is of when you need to tune out in certain situations, but you should be fully engaged in that situation. Um, Next, I wanted to try to share some things that we think that people can use to kind of fight against this issue. And again, like I mentioned earlier, we're not going to solve this issue with an hour podcast. We're just not, you know. Um, but we're still going to share our opinions or whatever. But we know that this is a bigger, issue that can be tackled. Um, and actually, I just wanted to finish up with some of the things that we do with our families. Um, again, this is not just something that we're saying. Oh, I saw this family doing that, and we would never do something like that. And Greg, you're the same way. You saw those issues and stuff at Disney and all that, and you'll say, I don't want people to feel like we're saying, no, we're better than that. No, we're not. We still deal with this in our regular daily lives, and I just wanted to share some of the things that we use to fight against those that's us, because it's so easy. It's so easy for everyone to just get lost in their devices and never communicate, text each other from the next room and things like that. Um, but yeah, that's things uh, that we use in our daily lives. So let's just try to you know follow these three subjects that I wanted to touch on, and we'll just go through it. So starting with the root cause of this. Now, I'll just say it,
yeah, I'm
just
gonna
put
say,
this bluntly.
say it,
Yeah.
say it.
Instead of just trying to be PC or trying to make it seem like just trying to ease people into it. It all boils down to addiction with me. and the more to that point, we talked about this before. There's socially accepted addictions, right? Everyone will say, "Stay off of drugs." You know what I mean? Don't drink alcohol and stuff like that. But go ahead and grab that phone and stay on it. The kids are out of school for a holiday or a break or something. It's okay to wake up in the morning and grab that phone and just stay on that phone until it's time for bed at night. Those are socially accepted addictions, and that's what it boils down to with me. It's just addiction, you know. Uh, and I kind of liken it to, I had coworkers at jobs, and Greg, I'm sure you had them too, to where they have to have that 15-minute smoke break. You know what I
Yep.
mean? In
Mm-hmm.
Texas, they people account for that. You have, you know, the state gives you a certain amount of time for break and lunch, depending on how many hours, and they would divide that in between smoke breaks during the day. That's how it is. It seems like people need a phone break, and even if it's a quick, I'll give you another real quick example. And me and my wife, we watch a lot of like crime dramas, police body cam footage, and stuff like that. And there was a murder investigation, and they're sitting in an interrogation room, and the guy is over spilling his guts or lying or whatever. I couldn't even remember what he was saying in that instant because it stood out so much to us that the the detective that was interviewing him, she sits back in her seat and she grabs her phone, and no kidding, she scrolls through maybe about 5 or 6 pages on Instagram. I believe it was Instagram because it was like big photos and stuff like that. And she's talking to him, and this is a murder investigation, and she just sat back with her phone and she scrolled through, unrelated to the case, unrelated to the investigation. She opened up her app, she scrolled through about 5 or 6 pages, and then she set the phone down and continued the conversation. And I'm like, wow, she didn't realize that she did that. That's an addiction.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Plain and simple. It was crazy. And it stood out so much to me and my wife. We started talking about it that night. Like, wow, people just don't. It's just like the smoke breaks. It's just like the people. You see these kids these days. They're talking and they're talking, and before you know it, they're puffing on a vape pen. Just in their regular daily conversation. Their regular daily tasks that they're doing. They just don't realize that they have these addictions that are around them. And again, I'm not saying that I'm better, but that's what it boils down to is just addiction. And I saw a doctor talking the other day, and he was talking about, and this was kind of really deep. I don't want to go off the deep end or whatever, but he was just saying like the addiction is not the problem. To the person with the addiction, that's the solution, right? They're using that to fix whatever problem it is that they can't face in their lives, right? The drug to them is not the problem. The drug is the solution of what they have going on in their lives. So I think why this is so socially accepted is because it doesn't seem like it's doing damage to people, right? It doesn't seem like just because the detective is taking a 2 minute break, or not even 2 minutes, is 90-second break to scroll through on her phone to fix to disassociate herself from the stress that she's hearing from this murder suspect that she's sitting there, right? Again, she didn't even notice she did it, but that was the solution that she had right within her reach, right? To just tune out from the horrible things that this guy is talking about. Let me tune out for a second, and okay, I'm ready. I can get back into it.
Yeah.
Um, and it's that with everything in life, whether it's a very anxiety inducing situation where you're going into a courtroom or you're going into an interview for a meeting and stuff, and rather than preparing your head for that meeting to answer these questions or whatever, because this is an interview for a position that you really want, you spend 20 minutes before you go into the interview scrolling through that phone, right? You're dealing with your situation with your kids. They don't want to do their homework. They're yelling and screaming. They're fighting about toys. They're fighting about whatever. And rather than confronting that situation, you sit back and you just scroll. And yeah, um, addiction is addiction is addiction, no matter how you look at it. Yes, thankfully, you're not picking up a bottle. You're not, drinking alcohol to try to drown out these things. But we have to see that scrolling through Instagram or TikTok all day. Oh, don't get me started on TikTok. That is the alcohol. TikTok is the drug of choice. And, we have to fight against that kind of stuff. But again, I'm not going to go too much about it. Greg, what do you have to say?
Yeah, I mean, society didn't realize the damage that nicotine and tobacco
Yeah.
would do for years and years and years. And it'll be interesting to see, you know, the studies and stuff that come out on this. But I do agree on the addiction part. I mean, anything overboard is bad, right?
Yeah.
Even really, really good things. So um, I think I see two different problems with this. One, I see that we as adults don't always model good behavior,
Hmm.
right? And so that's why we said at the beginning, if you're young, you don't think this applies to you. Well, it does, because think about the behavior that you're modeling to kids or nephews or whoever else is in your sphere of influence. We don't necessarily do a good job of modeling good behavior and deliberately teaching what's good and what's not. We just kind of let things happen. So I think that's the first part of the problem that I see. And
Yeah.
then the second problem, and I've done this before, and so I've got you know if I think, and I know we're going to talk about this a little bit in the post show, but if I think about kids with special needs and they're
Hmm.
throwing tantrums or whatever the case may be because they want to watch something on a tablet or something like that, it's really, really hard um, to work through those kinds of situations. And so I have
Yeah.
experience with that. I'm living that right now. But I think one of the things that happens is it's just easier, right? It's
Yeah.
easier to just, hey, I put the security controls on. They can only get to YouTube Kids and this other app that's only got kid stuff. So I'm just going to let them do
Yeah.
whatever they want and it'll be good. Or it's educational. And so I think, one, we don't model good behavior. And then two, I think we take the easy way out when it comes to kids and technology and stuff like that. And because it's rather than fight it, or rather than us putting down our devices and getting
Hmm.
on the floor and playing with kids, it's just easier to say, well, why don't you go, watch something on your tablet so I can
Right.
keep doing whatever it is that I'm doing, or the TV, or whatever the case may be. So to a
Correct.
certain extent, it's the easy way out. And I'm not saying that that's not okay sometimes. I think about, so again, we had COVID a few weeks ago, and my wife still had to watch the three grandkids, right? And she
Hmm.
was sicker than a dog. I mean, she could still
Hmm.
function, keep them safe, and all that kind of stuff. But she just getting down and playing with them or taking them to a park or, whatever the case may be, that stuff was just out of the question. And so she was more there supervising, right? The alternative
Right.
was my daughter calling in sick and missing work, and that has consequences too. So there was
Yeah.
more technology use that day, right? So it's not that
Yeah.
there's never a situation where you shouldn't use this to help with with the kids and stuff like that. But I think it's when it becomes the default, or when we do it because we just don't want to do the alternatives. I think that's when we really get into problems. So those are the two root
Right.
causes. It's the easy way out, and we don't model good behavior.
Right. Right. So I go back to that family that, they brought on this whole topic for me. Um, and again, I made no judgments about them. I didn't know anything about them. I was just a glimpse into that one situation. It just did seem like she chose the easy way. Because again, mom was on the phone too. Mom was, she would have fell into her phone screen if she wasn't sitting in a chair. Um, but it did seem like the easy way because there was so much to do on the ship. There's a full water park, a few decks above us, like right over our heads. But you would have had to get all of the kids ready. They would have all had to have on their swim trunks and stuff like that. She would have had to sit out in the sun, which it gets hot still, right? It wasn't an easy solution, but it was just another alternative that was available instead of doing what they can do at home and like I said, I'm not judging them, but it just seems like sitting on YouTube would have been the least of the last option to choose,
Yeah.
right? Between that. So Uh, anyway, moving on. So, what are some of the things that we can do to fight this growing, epidemic that we have going on? And uh, I see it growing. It definitely is growing. It since COVID. Um, it seems like it's gotten worse. Now I know kids have to become married to their devices for school and doing their classwork and Zoom meetings and stuff like that. Even with adults, right? During COVID, to communicate with the outside world, we had to be married to our devices. Um, but it seems like it's still on that path of getting worse. So, what are some of the things that we can do, Greg, to kind of fight against this?
I think number one is to get educated, right?
Yeah,
Understand what's out there, understand the research that's currently being done, understand the implications of smartphones or devices for age appropriate use. Um, Understand what you can do with the technology, like setting limits and stuff like that, right? I
yeah,
mean, and then be willing to set those limits and enforce them. And I mean, we talk about, like, Instagram has done a really good job. I'm seeing commercials again about the Instagram
yes,
children accounts or whatever they are, right? That they're all designed around protection, which I completely agree with, right? Making sure that they can't communicate with people that are going to take advantage of them, that parents understand who they're communicating with and stuff like that, which is all about safety.
hmm
Um, but I think also understanding how to set limits, right? From a time perspective. I think teaching when it's appropriate to use technology and when it's not. And just two quick things on this. One, there are a lot of schools that are deciding they're going to go smartphone free. So basically, you check your
yeah,
smartphone in at the beginning of the day and you get it back at the end of the day. And I don't know where I sit on that. I
hmm
understand why they're doing it, especially in Utah public schools where classrooms are large. Teachers have a hard time managing the number of students that they have. Um, but the story related to this is we took a youth group on a church history tour while we were in Houston, and it's one of those, you don't get to do this very often, and um, it's going to all of the church history sites, so some very spiritual opportunities, some growth opportunities, some learning opportunities. And I was part of the planning for it, and there was this big debate on, should we allow them to take their phones,
yeah,
right? Even allow them on the trip. And, um, there were arguments. Nope, we're not going to do it. Nope, we're not going to do it. And I said, look, number one, you tell them they can't have it. They're still going to take it. It's just going to be buried somewhere in the luggage that we can't find.
hmm
And they're going to sneak it out and they're going to use it. I said, second, it's their camera, right? This is how they're
yeah,
going to document their memories. Second, this is their communication device back home with their parents or with other friends that are on the trip, but maybe not in their group, that are part of another group.
hmm
Then the bigger thing for me was that if we tell them no, we would lose out on the opportunity to teach them appropriate usage, right?
yeah,
When it was appropriate to use them and when they're not. And ultimately, the leaders that made the decision agreed with me. And we allowed them to take smartphones. We did education leading up to the trip, and basically said, we're allowing you to do these. We expect you to be responsible. There are going to be times when we tell you to put your smartphones away, and we expect you to put them away.
yeah,
And the trip was fantastic. And my group, I don't know about the whole, I mean, it was a couple hundred youth, but my particular group, we didn't have any issues with it. But what I noticed when I came back from that trip, because I was still involved pretty heavily with the youth, what I realized when I came back from that trip is I also didn't have problems with inappropriate usage of smartphones. And I'm not talking about content, but
yeah,
using it during times when they shouldn't, at church or our youth activities going forward. Didn't have issues
yeah,
with it because we had taught them when it was appropriate and when it was not, and we didn't take something away that was such a part of their lives, right? And I think that's the point,
yeah,
is technology is prevalent in our lives. It has to be part of our lives. I mean, you almost can't get by anymore without a smartphone. There's no home phones,
yeah,
right? There's none of this kind of stuff. So if that's the case, then it's a matter of being deliberate in how we use them. And again, either allowing them to control our lives or us using those devices and controlling the devices to enhance our lives. I truly believe that it enhanced that trip, right? And
hmm
so I think again, going back to, we take the easy route. We don't educate ourselves, and then we don't educate those we have responsibility for on what's appropriate and what's not. And we just take the easy route, and what happens instead of being deliberate about
Yeah,
it. So get educated, be deliberate about it. And it's a constant battle to educate and reinforce. Now is not the time. Now is not the time. We're out for
yeah,
this amazing birthday dinner for grandpa that we only have a couple of birthdays left with that grandpa, right? And
yeah,
we've got the whole family together for the first time in how long? And you're going to hand them your phone or the kiosk that's on the table, right, to pay the bill that now has games built into it. Is that really what you want them doing when we're out celebrating, grandpa's 95th
yeah,
birthday,
yeah,
right? So we have to be more disciplined and deliberate, and then we have to teach the younger generation to do the same. So that's it for me.
yeah, yeah, yeah. Get them to enjoy the moment, you know. And again, we're talking about the kids, but adults too. Enjoy that moment. You know, we see so many times where there's something going on. Somebody's on the stage, or somebody's doing a performance or whatever, and no one's looking at the event. Everybody's looking at the event on their screen while they're recorded. You know what I mean? Or taking pictures of it, or trying to get. They can't focus on the event because they're trying to get that perfect angle, or now we're going through tons of settings on our iPhones to try to get the lighting and the filter and you know what I mean? It's just,
Yeah.
uh, just enjoy the moment, be in the moment, and enjoy it, because it's going to pass right by. So for me, I think people should treat this issue like they would any issue that they feel is getting out of hand, or they may, already be out of hand, right? And that's to take a step back and assess the situation, right? I said earlier, again, back to that detective, she didn't even realize what she did. You know, I should have looked in the comment section to see if other people noticed it, but a lot of people don't even know that it's an addiction, right? Most people who are on drugs or drink or stuff like that, they have family around them to do an intervention. Well, nobody's going to do an intervention in this situation because everybody's doing the same thing, right? It's a socially accepted addiction. So there won't be an intervention for you. But if you step back and you see yourself, you find yourself scrolling through, um, different apps or playing Candy Crush in times and moments where you should be engaged in whatever situation you're in, then again, just step back and just monitor what you're doing, and just try to get an idea of how bad this particular issue is for you. Um, Restrictions aren't a bad thing, and it's not restrictions is not necessarily a bad word in these situations. We talked about using FaceTime or screen time, not FaceTime, screen time on the iOS, and I'm sure there's a version on Samsung and Google phones that you can use. And what it does is it lets you know how much time you're using on certain apps, right? Turn that on, and if you see, you're always telling yourself, I don't have time, I don't have time, I'm so busy, I'm so busy. And at the end of the week, you get your report, and it's saying you spent 40 hours on Facebook. Well, there you go. Maybe you'll have more time if you didn't spend 40 hours a week on Facebook or Instagram, or, you spent 9 hours playing a certain game, and it shows you the time of day when you're playing this game, and you see, well, I'm waking up in the morning tired all the time because I spent, till 2 a.m. laying in the bed playing Candy Crush. It holds you accountable, right? When you can see these numbers and you can see these things just laid out for you, these statistics and stuff. So setting these restrictions for yourself may not be a bad thing. And I don't mean the restrictions as in it stops it closes the app down, and it gives you a time limit on each one. No, you set up screen time so you can just kind of assess the situation. You can see where these numbers are trending to. Are you using this app more on this day? Are you using this app? Well, maybe if I can try to make a conscious effort to use this application less, on these days or whatever, maybe I'll have more time to be productive and stuff like that. So again, take a step back, look at the situation, turn on screen time or whatever equivalent is on Google, and just try to assess the situation to see how bad these numbers are for you. And then, like Greg mentioned earlier, try to model this better behavior, this better time management and phone management to your children or your grandchildren or whatever family members, uh, that you need to be a better role model for. Um, yeah, and just, figure out what best works for your situation. You know what I mean? And I put on here cold turkey doesn't work for everyone. It doesn't. It really only works for people who are making a conscious decision to try to change this behavior, right? If you smoke and you say, I'm done with smoking, I don't want to, deal with the health issues, or you vaping, and they'll quit cold turkey. You can't make anyone else quit cold turkey. That's not something you want to do, especially with kids who are dealing with the addiction and who don't realize that they're addicted, right? This is just part of their lives, right? They grew up with phones in their hands. They grew up being able to do what they want to do on these devices. So making them go cold turkey and saying, get rid of this, get rid of that, and turning on these restrictions that totally time out, you know what I mean, or deletes apps from their phone, may not be a good idea. So just do what works best for your situation. You know your kids better than we do. We know our kids better than anyone else. We know the grandkids better, but our grandkids still have parents themselves. You know what I mean? So do what works best for your family. So
Yeah, and this is not an area where you can cut this out of your life completely. I mean,
yeah,
smoking, drugs, alcohol, those things can be cut out completely, and
yeah,
your
I
life
forget.
is not impacted, like it doesn't
Yeah,
hamper your ability to live your life. Cut out technology in today's world is just not an option, right? I mean, even I watch a lot of the like Mountain Men and those
yeah,
kinds of shows, right? And those people that are living in homesteads, miles and miles and miles from civilization still have internet and or
yeah,
radios and or satellite phones because they can't be cut off completely from the world. We're just not built to not know when a massive storm's going to blow in and I'm living out in a homestead and I've
hmm,
got dead trees I need to get cut down before the storm comes in, or I need to get that last fuel dropped to me, right? So that I can get through the storm or whatever the case may be, right? We're just not in a world that even in those kinds of situations that you can really do without this kind of stuff. So even if you could deal with the addiction cold turkey, you can't cut this stuff
yeah,
out of your life. It's going to be there. So learning how to manage it instead of it managing you is the only way to let it enhance your life.
yeah, yeah. I can agree with that. So you mentioned a mountain man. I can see one, a lumberjack. Just he loves his chainsaw. He has a good chainsaw, so he cuts down trees for 10 hours a day, and he goes home. And his wife is like, "Hey, it's time to put up the chainsaw." He's like, "No, no, I need it to cut my cut my pancakes," and he cut his
Yeah.
pancakes with. I need it. He's just laying in the bed next to him, and it's just doing a hum. Like, okay, well, it's a tool. I know you need your chainsaw, but it's kind of getting out of hand.
Yeah.
You're in the
That's
shower with
funny.
it, and it's running behind the shower. Like, so let's finish up, Greg, with some things that we do for our families. Now, I saw this issue coming miles down the road or years down the road, before it got here. And I'm not saying I'm perfect. I've grown as a parent. You know what I mean? I have a 25-year-old, I have a 14-year-old, and an 8-year-old, and now I have two grandkids. Um, I've grown. So when I say these things, I'm not saying that I'm better or I'm perfect at all. But my kids always had restrictions, even back to my 25-year-old. Now, it was a little extreme, right? Greg and I talked before. Like, I used to block pornography at the router level in my home and stuff like that. And you know, as I've matured as an adult, as an older dad now, I learned that, I missed those opportunities to talk to my son to prevent, because as soon as he left the house, when he was with his friends or back at his mom's house or something like that, he was right back into the stuff that I was trying to prevent him from. So now with my middle son and my daughter, we have these uncomfortable conversations a lot. There's a lot of uncomfortable conversations, partly because, I'm older and it's not so uncomfortable to have these conversations now with them as it was when I was with him. So my kids always had restrictions. And but now I've gone from restrictions as in totally cutting it off to managing it better. So let's take my middle son, for example. He still has social media, but it's limited. And we went up and down too, depending on his grades and his behavior during the time. He can go from, you know, I've had him down to like an hour a day to up to like 4 hours a day with certain things, with certain apps. And with iOS, you have that ability to say you get 4 hours a day on Instagram, divided between Instagram, Facebook, chatting, his PlayStation app with his friends from his gaming system and stuff like that. And you figure out how you want to divide that time, split that time amongst all of these. And I believe now he's down to 2 hours. So starting at 4 o'clock when he's out of school, when he's home, he'll have 4 hours to divide between all of these different things. So, you know, setting restrictions again is not a bad thing. My kids always had restrictions, and again, I don't want anybody to go cold turkey. If you have kids that are used to doing whatever they want to do on their devices and no kind of restrictions like that, then maybe the first step into that would be, instead of setting those restrictions and limiting them to 3 hours or 2 hours or something like that, you want to start having these conversations and start trying to, I don't know the word I'm looking for, kind of manually have them make the choice not to use it, right? Hey, let's all sit down for dinner and let's put our phones away and give them the option to put the phone away rather than restricting it on the phone. You know what I mean? Something like that. Just kind of
Yeah.
ease them into it.
I mean, but the reality is the restrictions don't do any good without the conversation.
Right.
They
Right.
may treat the symptom, but they don't treat the root cause. And again,
Yeah.
if they, you can't cut this out of your life, right? I mean, you could probably cut out social media, but there's a lot of good that comes from social media, right? I mean, I think
Hmm.
about my wife and how much she still has contact with great friends that we had in Houston, and most of that is through social media, right? That's how
Yeah.
she keeps up on what their families are doing. And these are kids that were part of the youth groups that we led, right? And now they're starting to have their own kids, and that's how you keep track of that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
it you got to have the conversation because you want them to have their lives enhanced by the technology and all of the good technology that out there. And the technology itself is not inherently good or bad, right? It's how you use it
Yeah.
that is determines that. So the restrictions and all of this other stuff don't do any good without the education and the conversations that need to be had.
Yeah. Yeah. And all it does is, you force them to do it and they have these restrictions. All they're doing is waiting till they can get back to their device. They're
Yep.
waiting to get back to social media. So you're having dinner together and you're enjoying it because you have your family together and their mind is somewhere else. Their mind is like, I can't wait till this is over. This is such a hassle for me. I can't wait till I can get back to doing what it is that I want to do. So, yeah, Greg, you're 100% right. Have those conversations and let them know the reason why your family is making this change and why, you want to start doing things. And the next thing I have on the list is give them hobbies. And, not just hobbies for the sake of having a hobby, but give them things, especially things that they love to do. Right? My daughter loves her softball. And it's hard for her to have a device in her hand when she has on a glove and swinging a bat or something like that. Right? So her softball team. Now, if you're a regular listener, I told a story about the third baseman. No, she was second base. And they all go out on the field and they're like, "Where's second base? Where's second base?" And she's sitting back in the back of the dugout on her phone. So too much technology sometimes in a situation where they need to be focused. Um, but yeah, hobby like that. My daughter, she loves to draw. She loves to uh, be artsy, right? She's always on Etsy figuring out different projects. I think it's Etsy. It's one of those sites where kids are doing projects and stuff, and she's always making masks or making little animals and stuff like that. So she loves her hobbies. Um, find what your kid loves to do, or you know what your family member loves to do, or you yourself find a hobby that you like to do instead of scrolling through Instagram or Candy Crush or something like that, and do those hobbies. You know, try to limit that screen time and fight against it. But Greg, and that kind of ties into what you have next, right?
Yeah, and I worded this wrong in our notes. So I put replace screens with the real world. And I don't think that's accurate because I've been saying all along, right, that you can't. But I mean, because
Yep,
I read, I read multiple books a
yep,
week, right? But it's all on a device. And that's what my
yep.
beloved iPad mini is used for. But I've taken a whole bunch of stuff off of my iPad mini. And every once in a while, in fact, I try and go look for Amazon on my iPad mini and I've removed the app, right? So, because I've
Hmm.
got that mini down to what I want. So you can't replace it. But I think this is more about deliberate engagement in the real world.
Yeah.
And whether it be hobbies or, whatever. I mean, we buy, we have bags of these giant Lego blocks for our grandkids
Yeah.
and we have a Jenga game, but they don't play Jenga with it. They use it to build stuff. Yesterday our
Right.
our youngest grandson was over here for just a few minutes, and he was like, "Grandma, will you play with me?" But Grandma was trying to get ready to do stuff, so I put down my computer from work and I went up in the loft, and all he wanted to do was to build a little house for this itty bitty dinosaur thing he had got out of a vending machine,
Hmm.
and that's what he wanted to do. So we built the house for the dinosaur, and then he was ready to go with Grandma to do laundry. So I think it's about deliberate engagement in the real world. And do we use technology to replace things, or do we use it to enhance? And there was this, like I mentioned, there was this talk a church leader just gave on Sunday, and um, he talked about how he does talks every single week, right? And
Hmm.
he said, I do not use AI to draft my talks. I do not use AI to do any of that kind of stuff. He says, I do use AI to come back and give me feedback about the tone or, those
Okay.
kinds of things on his talks. And so I thought that was a good modeling of ways that you could use AI. I mean, his joke was, I wonder how many talks and lessons this coming Sunday will be written by AI, right? And one of the things he pointed out is that it takes the work out of it. And that work is what we need from a mental perspective, right? We need to put in the effort to learn and grow. You can have AI write your term paper, right?
Hmm.
But what are you getting out of that class if AI writes your term paper, right?
Yep.
Are you really learning? Are you getting anything out of it? And so I think it's this deliberate interaction with the real world. For the younger kids, I'm looking up at my fridge, and one of the first things my oldest granddaughter wanted to do when we got the new trailer was to draw and color a picture and have it put up on our fridge, right?
Hmm.
She will go sit at the kitchen table for hours on end with pencils and crayons and paper, and she may have her device up because it's got the YouTube channel of the guy teaching kids how to draw something. And so
Right.
she's trying to draw along with it, right?
Hmm.
um, we bought her that iPad thinking that she'd want to draw and color on the device, and it's just never materialized. She uses it like I just mentioned, but she's not using it as a replacement for the real stuff. So I think that's part of it. We deliberately moved to where we live today, right? So we could do more things on the outside. Now we've got to get everybody, we seem to be like rotating through viruses and colds and stuff like that for the last two
Yeah.
months. So now that the weather is not 115 degrees, we could go do that kind of stuff. But finding those real world things and being very, very deliberate about our real world engagement. Just one more example. Like normally when I go for bike rides and stuff, I have a podcast or something in. I listened to a really good
Yeah.
podcast yesterday about somebody that really uses the Vision Pro to get their work done. In fact, their MacBook Pro got smashed and
Mm.
and also destroyed their iPhone at the same time. So they're really their only computing device, unless they borrow their spouse's MacBook Air, is the Vision Pro. And
Yeah.
she is getting most of her work done doing that. The only time she really has to go to the Mac is when she edits her podcast stuff in Riverside. By the way, she does use
Okay.
Riverside, so I thought that was fascinating. But anyway, so normally I listen to something like that, but my wife and I have did a couple of walks last week together,
Hmm.
and I didn't even take the headphones. I took the headphones just in case I got a work call or something
Yeah.
like that, right? But they sat in my pocket, and we just walked and talked, and it was great. Instead of both of us having our headphones in, listening to something different or even the same thing, because we do listen to some of the same podcasts. So I think it's just about making deliberate choices about when we're going to engage in the real world versus when
Yeah.
we're going to engage in technology, and then choosing to allow technology to enhance our lives, not control them. So, and what that looks like for everybody is different. But Jason said earlier, take a step back, assess the situation that you're in, and then figure out what makes the most sense. Figure out where you want to be with it,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. Building a dinosaur house instead of technology. So, just to wrap this thing up, this is a pretty complex, situation, right? We can spend hours talking about this, and um, but rather than doing that, we're going to go ahead and just end it right now. But this is a part of the show where I want to invite you to join the conversation, right? Email, message us, jump in that comment section, and just share your own experiences with this issue, right? We can't be the only people, and I know we're not, but uh, if you're listening to the show, I'm pretty sure you at some point kind of experienced this, right? Trying to find that balance between using your devices or being lost in these devices or, dealing with the addiction, whether it be with your children or, your students or something like that. So share those experiences with us. Jump in that comment section or just shoot us a message and just let us know how you're dealing with this. Um, Also, don't forget to stick around for the post show where Greg and I are going to try to make an argument for the other side, right? And see if we may be wrong about this whole thing. So, thanks for listening, everybody. Greg, you wanna add anything?
No, I think that's good. Give it some thought. Again, all if all you do is start thinking about this, then
Yeah,
mission accomplished for this. So, but I do like the idea that
yeah,
in the post show we'll talk about some circumstances where maybe the technology is helpful. So,
yeah, yeah. Well, thanks, everybody. Don't forget to build that dinosaur house.
yep,
See you
build
next
the
week.
house.
All right, folks. Thanks for sticking around. Again, this is Gadgets for Families, the show where you get these two grandpas sharing our opinion. So we just finished up talking about um, device addiction, device overusage, tuning out when tuning out goes wrong, and things like that. But now I want to just kind of do something. Now this is just me playing around, just experimenting. I think our minds are both made up on one side of this argument, but we're going to try to see if we can see both sides, and maybe we're just being two grouchy old men about this situation and not moving along with the times and changing with the times. Maybe we need to accept that this is just the way the world is, right? The
No,
world is just
no,
changing around
no,
us, and
no,
I
no.
know,
I don't mind exploring the other side of the argument, but I'm never going to. Well, maybe never is a strong word, but I do not agree that this is the way the world is, and we should just let it be. So,
right, right, and I think a lot of people have that attitude. So I just say, well, maybe we're wrong about it. Maybe we just need to get hip and just move on. So let me start off with another story. Now, this one, the first story I told was about the family with the kids with the iPad and the mom, and they just locked everything out. This story is something different. This one actually had me a little angry because it happened to me. This one kind of bothered me more. So, uh, on every cruise that is 5 days and more, they have a what they call a family reunion on the ship. Now, these are all the seasoned and experienced cruisers. You have reached a certain level, right? And that's diamond and platinum level of cruising. Um, Of course, platinum being the people who like to cruise a lot several times a year. Like my wife and I, and diamond is reserved for the folks who basically grew up on a cruise ship. So you have people celebrating their 125th cruise on the shoot. So anyway, a long story short, they have what they call it a family reunion, and you sit, and the captain comes, and the cruise director, and the hotel management and staff, all of the leadership on the ship comes to the party, and they mingle with all of the guests and all of that. And the captain does a speech, talks about his experiences with different cruisers, and just reminisce about different times and stuff. So um, part of this reunion party is you can bring a guest. So whoever's cruising with us, we usually bring someone, and family members bring younger family members and stuff like that. Well, we were sitting there on the front row, and the captain's giving his whole, I've been sailing for this many years, and I've worked with this person, and I love them so much. And I'm hearing out of the right behind me, I'm hearing nursery rhyme songs like Coco Melon or something like that. If you're familiar with that, it's just basically just nursery rhyme songs and sing along. Um, but it's getting louder and louder to the point to where it's drowning out the captain as he's speaking. So I just totally just glance around, and I see grandma sitting there with her daughter and her granddaughter, right? The baby. And she's 2 years old. And she's holding her mom's iPhone. And I mean, she is blasting Wheels from the Bus. The wheels on the bus go round and round. It annoyed me because mom is used to it. Mom is used to, okay, I don't want her screaming. I don't want her bouncing all over the place. Here, just take my phone. And she puts on a video for her. But mom is so used to it that she blocks it out because mom is sitting right next to her. We're in the row ahead, and the music is so loud, I can hear the captain on the stage who's talking into a microphone in the theater, right? That's how loud it was. And I'm like, wow, she didn't even notice that her daughter, the grandma saw me turn around and saw the lady that was cruising with us in our group. She turns around, we turn around at the same time and look, and the grandma says, oh, people are noticing, and she tells the daughter to turn the phone down. So, but if no one had turned around, no one had noticed, um, we wouldn't have been able to hear the captain. We wouldn't have been able to hear the captain's speech because the infant, the toddler on the phone was so loud. So that situation bothered me because that's another issue outside of, you know, our own addiction and our own, dependence on these devices. She's using it as a babysitting tool, right? In order for me to keep my daughter quiet. And there could be other things going on. You're right. So as I thought about the situation, maybe I was overreacting in my anger, right? Maybe I'm just mad because I missed half of the speech. But there could have been an issue. Maybe the little girl was dealing with some issues, and I'm like, her mom is just giving that to her just to babysit. But maybe that's not it. Maybe that wasn't the case at all.
Well,
So, oh, go
let
ahead.
me. Do you mind if I chime in here for a second?
Yeah,
So
yeah. No, go ahead.
let's
Go
think
ahead.
about the alternative, right? Let's say those are the only three that are on the cruise. So what do you do with the toddler if you want to attend this special thing,
Yeah.
right? Now I'm not saying that she handled it the right way, but if I think about, so my daughter is a single mom, 3 kids.
Hmm.
Most likely all three will end up on the autism spectrum. We've already had two confirmed
Hmm.
that they are somewhere on the autism spectrum. And let's say that we have a super nice family reunion that we want to go to, right?
Hmm.
And in order for everybody to go, those 3 kids have to go. And what are the chances that whatever we're doing there, right, is going to keep them occupied and entertained and be engaging for them, right? And so, yes, I don't think technology should be the default babysitting tool.
Right.
But I do think there are circumstances when my choice is either I cannot attend or I can find a way to keep this other person happy, right, and
Right.
content with things. So
Right.
let me give a close to home example. My youngest son, Wyatt, remembers having to go to every single orchestra concert for Dustin, right? Now,
Mm-hmm.
Dustin's a professional musician now. That's his life. That was his life going through all of this kind of stuff. But to a certain extent, the only way we could both go, both my wife and I go to those, is if all the other kids went as well. And the only way we were going to be able to enjoy, and everybody else was going to be able to enjoy this, was to keep them content and,
Yeah.
occupied. Now, for Wyatt, a lot of it was about how many snacks we packed, right? So he could,
Yeah.
so he could
That usually
have,
works for me.
he could have snacks and stuff. But if we let him look at a phone or listen to a video in between the different orchestras, because the high school that Dustin went to, there were 4 orchestras, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you go to a concert and you're listening to all 4,
Yeah.
right? And so, we let him do that kind of stuff in between. So I think where I'm getting to, and I think this is where we would probably land if we ever took little kids again to Disneyland, would be, when does it make sense? Because it allows us to continue to have the experience, right?
Mm-hmm.
Versus I'm just going to give you your tablet because I don't want to deal with you and I want to get lost in my own technology. So if I can get lost in my own technology by letting you get lost in yours, then I think there's a difference in those. And maybe it sounds like I'm splitting hairs.
Yeah.
But I do think there is a place for technology that allows us to do things that maybe we wouldn't have been able to do because uh, we couldn't. I don't know. I mean, I see stories all the time of weddings that are no little kids, right? But it's that little kid's favorite aunt that's getting married, and you're going to tell them that they can't show up because you don't want them to be disruptive and all that kind of stuff. Let me give you one more example. We had so not only did I lose my mom and dad last year, but I also lost my grandpa shortly before my mom. It might have
Mm-hmm.
been right at the end of the year before, but we had his celebration of life, and I had my 3 grandkids there. My sister had her kids there,
Mm-hmm.
and we're mingling with family that the kids don't have any clue who they are, right? We're eating, but then there's all of this mingle time. And what do you do with the kids during
Yeah.
that kind of stuff, right? And
Yeah.
so that was one of those times when we felt like, okay, here's your tablet, here's your headphones, and they
Mm-hmm.
were, all the littlest ones were just perfectly content, right, to just go sit on the floor against the wall behind the table and
Yeah.
do their tablets while we mingled and talked to families celebrating the life of my grandpa. So, but again, it's deliberate, right? Do you make a deliberate decision to do that then? And when you don't have to do it, quote unquote, have to do it, are you choosing
Mm-hmm.
to engage with the kids in the real world rather than use it as the default babysitting
Yeah.
device, right? So the reason I bring that up is just to give kind of the counter, right? Is if the mom's choice was either I can go to this cool thing, which I may never get to go to again, right?
Right. Right.
But
Yeah.
I have to bring my daughter or not go, right? Then maybe she should have used headphones. All of our grandkids have their own headphones that
Yeah.
for when we need to do that, right? 5-hour car ride or whatever the case may be. Yep. Okay. It's good for them to have that kind of stuff. So just that counterpoint, right? And we
Yeah.
don't know their situation. I know you're not judging them, right? I'm not
Yeah.
either. But I think the message that I would get across is it a deliberate choice for a specific reason? Is it the default method, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if you can answer those questions appropriately for your situation, then maybe you're doing just fine in managing
Yeah.
technology in your life, right?
Yeah. Yep. And you're right. So I'm definitely not judging her. And like I said, in my anger, I tried to think through it, which brought me to this whole, when is it necessary, right? And obviously, not obviously, because again, I don't know them, I don't know the situation, but it doesn't seem like the type of situation where that she was prepared for, right? Because if it was something that she did all the time, she would have had the headphones, right? She would have had, or maybe a small little tablet, something to. They would have sat in a area to where she could, blast the
Yeah.
music and not disturb anyone or whatever. So it does seem like it was maybe an on the fly decision. Maybe she was just being extra anxious that day, extra antsy moving around. And she was like, hey, I want to go to this event with my mom. let me just throw her my phone. So it could be a good thing again. Um, but it did get me to thinking that, maybe I'm thinking about this wrong, because there are situations like you just mentioned where it's absolutely necessary to keep the kids occupied in adult situations, or situations that they won't be able to deal with, in a normal, a normal setting or whatever. So what I mean by that is there's technology that allows kids to be included in situations where they wouldn't be included, right? They couldn't
Right.
handle it mentally, or they're dealing with autism or anxiety and stuff like that. And this allows them to participate with the other kids, and and in a situation would normally be unbearable for them, right?
Hmm.
So the first one I had was these sensory bags that they sell in Camp Ocean, and I'm hearing about these at different parks, right? Like Disney, I believe they have some there, and other big events and stuff. And in that sensory bag, they get things like, um, not noise canceling headphones, but headphones to kind of lighten the noise, right? If there's going to be um, explosions and stuff like that, or you know what I mean? They have
Yeah.
those like
Hmm.
construction worker kind of headphones, or some noise canceling ones. Um, those type of headphones you put in and you do like a guided tour, right? Like at a museum or something, you have the what do they call it? The tour guide. Not They're not
Yeah.
called tour guides, but the ones doing the guided tours, telling you about the different exhibits and stuff like that. Whereas
Hmm.
around them, it's loud, it's chaos, it's kids yelling and stuff, it's parents yelling at kids and stuff falling over, and there may be construction going on outside or whatever. But they can have a focus experience in those headphones, right?
Hmm.
So someone dealing with anxiety, or whatever kind of issue that they're dealing with, they'll still be able to participate. Um, we see all the time at different events that we have kids walking around with those Beats, those noise canceling headphones or whatever, and they're there at the event, but it is really loud. The band is playing really loud. Even for me, who you know, everyone has anxiety that they deal with, but I've dealt with loud noises my whole life or whatever. And even sometimes I'm at these events like, wow, that band is really loud, or the DJ is really loud. Like, so I get it that there's some technology in situations to where that could be useful. So I don't, I don't, I'm not faulting the lady for giving the child the phone in that situation, but I just feel like she should have been more conscious of her surroundings.
Yeah.
Well, you know what I mean? Because again, she was able to block it out. She was totally in, because the captain was telling jokes and laughing, and the audience was laughing and joking around, and she was into that. But I was taken out of the situation by, again,
Yeah.
wheels on the bus go round and round. So yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
I think I would summarize this because, one of the questions that, and I adamantly said, no, I'm not just going to accept that this is the way the world is.
yeah,
Here's one of the things I would invite everybody to do: do a little bit of an internal retrospective, right? Or an internal assessment of yourself and say, am I just accepting that this is the way it is and I can't do anything about it? Or am I making deliberate decisions as to when it's appropriate to allow this to happen, right? When is it okay? Am I deciding when it's okay to let somebody get lost in technology, or myself even, right?
hmm,
Um, or am I just accepting that it is what it is, and what's going to happen is what's going to happen? Because that I'm just going to accept that what's going to happen is is what's going to happen, to me, is totally trying to abdicate yourself of any responsibility to do anything about it. Right? You're just
yeah,
saying, it just is what it is. I mean, I read a lot of books. Okay, a lot of
hmm,
books, and I could get on a Sunday afternoon after church and after some of my other stuff that I try to do on Sundays, I
hmm,
could read 2 or 3 books. If I just picked up my iPad, if, like, let's say Karen's over with the grandkids at their place or something like that, I could pick up and I could read 2 or 3 books. Is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? Right? Am
yeah,
I getting lost and not dealing with anything else that's going on? Or am I choosing to read because that's the time of the week that I can read, and I know that I can get lost because I'm not going to work. I'm not going to do chores. I'm not going to do any of those kinds of things. So this is my opportunity to do it. So really to
Yeah.
me, and I've been on this kick a lot lately with myself, with my kids, is it a deliberate choice or am I just letting things happen? Because I firmly believe we are the only species on this planet that can consciously choose, right? Everybody else, everything else,
Yeah.
animals, they all act on instinct, right? But we can make conscious choice. So are we giving that up by just saying, I'm going to let the technology control me? Or are
Right.
we deliberately choosing when we allow it to enhance our lives? And sometimes when we just let it go, right? When do we just say, hey, my wife, I love my wife dearly, and I felt bad because I was trying to work. I also had COVID. She's over with the grandkids, and I go over there to take them some food because I was better off than she was. And the TV's on, and the kids have tablets, but two of the three kids are curled up in her lap. That's how they were taking care of grandma, right?
Yeah.
But she couldn't do anything else, and so it was okay for her to say, yeah, we had a higher use of technology that day, but I know when she feels good that she's down on the floor playing with the kids, the TV's not on, that they're playing with blocks, they have a whole mess of toys, right? So they're doing all
Hmm.
of these other kinds of things. And so again, I'm not saying we do it better than anybody else, because there are definitely times when we do just say, we're going to let you we're going to let the technology take care of this situation. But what I'm saying is, I think we do a reasonable job of making it be a deliberate choice. And that's what I would encourage everybody to think about. Don't just accept that it's going to ruin your life, or that it's going to consume your life, or that you can't control it and that you can't do anything about it. Take a step back, figure out what you can do, and then do what you can. Make it deliberate. And then technology will enhance your life, not control it.
Yep.
So,
Yep. 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 I like that. I like that. And I think that's a good place to end. So thanks for listening, everybody. We really appreciate everyone that subscribed. If you're new to the show and you're really liking this, we have conversations like this on a regular basis, but usually it doesn't get too heavy around here, right, Greg? We really try
yeah.
to keep it light. We still love technology, even though we're kind of shifting from a tech show to just a life, a life show. But still, there's going to be lots of tech, lots of gaming, lots of family, and
Yep.
lots of episodes like this to come. So I don't think we'll have one next week. That's which is why I really wanted to record today, because I know next week I have a really long week that I'm not looking forward to, and I hadn't even got through this week yet.
Well,
So
we might be skipping a couple weeks then. So what we might not get in is our pre Black Friday, because the week after that's Thanksgiving.
right,
So
right.
yeah, so
So
might be a couple weeks, but we're not committing, right? I mean, programming note, we're not recording every week. We're recording when we can record. So
yeah. And as usual, if you don't get that, you may get another arcade restore video. I'm finishing up the next video where I did some body work and stuff to the cabinet. So we'll release something, or we'll just release some short list of our wish list, right?
yeah, we can do
Whatever you're
something.
thinking,
We'll figure it
we'll
out.
figure something.
So, but if not, I mean, you just might not hear from us again till after Thanksgiving, and we'll go from there. So
Yeah. All right. Thanks, everybody, and have a good week.
enjoy.